The camera slipped in Felix Harper's hands as his 5-year-old daughter tugged on his jacket, whispering, "Daddy, is that the princess?" Felix steadied the rented Canon and glanced up from where he was crouched, taping the bride's entrance at the lavish lakeside ceremony. "Kinda," he whispered back to Tessa, who was perched on a folding chair beside him, a juice box in hand. "But we've got to be quiet, okay? Daddy's working." Truth was, Felix hadn't touched a real camera since college. Now, as a single dad juggling 2 part-time jobs, he only said yes to this gig because his neighbor's cousin was the groom and they needed someone cheap. Real cheap. He'd borrowed the camera, ironed his only button-down shirt, and promised the wedding planner he'd keep his daughter quiet during the ceremony. He hadn't expected the wedding to look like it belonged in a movie. White roses twisted around a custom arch, champagne flowing before the vows even began, and a string quartet playing like they were being paid by royalty. But everything shifted the second she walked in. Not the bride, though she was stunning in her mermaid gown, but the woman trailing behind her. The maid of honor. She wore a black silk dress that hugged her figure and heels that could kill. Her hair was tied back in a sleek twist, face set in calm elegance, but her eyes, they were sharp, focused, alive. Felix blinked, totally forgetting to hit record for a second. She turned suddenly, catching him staring. Her brows lifted just a little, not judgmental, curious. He fumbled and looked down at the camera. "Daddy," Tessa whisper yelled. "You're not filming." "I know," he muttered, hitting record again, cheeks burning. After the ceremony, the reception took over the massive cliffside estate. Felix kept his distance from the guests, working the edges of the ballroom with the camera while Tessa sat near the buffet table, coloring her unicorn book. He checked in with the event planner twice just to make sure it was still okay for her to be there. They'd said yes, as long as she wasn't in the way. He was filming the bride and groom's first dance when someone stepped beside him. "You forgot to film the cake cutting." Felix looked up. Her. Same sharp eyes, same black dress, same calm voice. What? You missed it. It happened 10 minutes ago. I figured you were the videographer." "I am, I mean just for today," he said, brushing his hand over the lens nervously. "I didn't know they were doing it early." She crossed her arms, watching him. "You're not a professional, are you?" "Nope," he said, not even pretending. "This is a favor." For a very distant connection. She looked over at Tessa, who was now sipping her second juice box and talking to a waiter like he was her best friend. "And she's your daughter." "Yeah," Felix straightened. "Sorry if it's weird." "I didn't have a sitter." "It's not weird," she said, her stare softening. "It's refreshing, actually." He blinked. "Refreshing?" She extended a hand. "Daphne Brooks, maid of honor, bride's sister." He hesitated, then took her hand. "Felix Harper. Struggling cameraman / barista / auto shop assistant, and single dad." She raised a brow. "You say that like it's a punchline." "It usually is." Daphne's lips pulled into a real smile. "Well, Felix / everything, you might have missed the cake, but you got the vows perfectly." "I saw the footage. It was raw, real. People pay a fortune to look that genuine." He frowned. "How'd you see the footage?" "I run the company that hired the wedding planner. I know what's going on at my events." His brows lifted. "Wait, you own the planning company?" "No, I own the resort." "The whole property, Brooks Estates." She said it casually, like she hadn't just dropped a bomb. Felix stared. "You're the Daphne Brooks." Her eyes twinkled. "You've heard of me." "No, that name's on everything here, and you said it so." "Chill. I don't usually advertise it." "But you looked like you weren't gonna ask." "I figured I'd already messed up enough not filming the cake." Daphne laughed. "You messed up, but not enough to ruin the night. Besides, the bride's drunk already and forgot." He smiled, really smiled for the first time that day. "Thanks," she nodded toward Tessa. "She's beautiful, looks like you." "She's got her mom's eyes," he said quietly. Daphne didn't press, just nodded. "I should get back to filming," Felix said, lifting the camera. "Actually," she said, stopping him, "would you want to get a drink after?" "With me?" He blinked. "Wait, like a date?" "Not if you don't want it to be, but I'd like to talk more. And I think your daughter would love the dessert bar." Felix looked over at Tessa, who was now dancing in a circle with another kid near the stage. "I mean, she'd say yes in a heartbeat." Daphne smiled. "Then let's take her to it." They walked together through the crowd, Daphne reaching for a macaron to hand Tessa, who accepted it like she'd just gotten a treasure. Felix watched the way Daphne lowered herself to Tessa's level, asking about her unicorns and her sparkly shoes. It was the first time in a long time someone treated Tessa like a person and not just a tag-along, and when Daphne looked up at him, eyes warm and curious, Felix's chest tightened. He hadn't been looking for anything, definitely not love, but something about this woman, this CEO who didn't act like one, was impossible to ignore. And even though he barely knew her, he couldn't shake the feeling that tonight had changed something big. The next morning, Felix stood at the sink in his tiny kitchen, rinsing oatmeal from Tessa's bowl as the whir of the old dishwasher hummed behind him. Through the cracked window above the sink, the city blinked awake sunlight bouncing off traffic, horns already blaring. Tessa was still in her pajamas, curled on the couch with a picture book, her pink blanket wrapped around her like armor. He dried his hands and checked his phone again. Nothing. Not that he expected a message. Daphne hadn't asked for his number the night before, and he hadn't asked for hers. The moment at the dessert bar had felt suspended in time, like it belonged to a version of himself who didn't have overdue rent and 2 shifts waiting at the auto shop today. He leaned in the doorway. "Tess, you okay if we head to Miss Carla's soon?" She looked up, brushing curls out of her face. "Will she have apple slices again?" "Probably." "Then I'm okay." He helped her into her sneakers, packed her snack bag, and walked her 2 blocks to the woman who watched her after school when he couldn't. Miss Carla greeted them in her front yard, already watering plants and wearing a visor like she was coaching a soccer team instead of babysitting. "You look tired," she said, eyeing Felix. "It was a wedding," he replied. "Big one, biggest I've seen." She handed Tessa a pitcher of water for the flower beds, then lowered her voice. "You meet anyone?" Felix hesitated, then shook his head. "Just the usual crowd, champagne and small talk." Miss Carla pressed her lips together but didn't push. She never did. After he dropped Tessa off, Felix walked the 5 blocks to the garage where he worked afternoons. The scent of oil and metal hit him before the door even opened. He clocked in, swapped his shirt for a grease-stained coverall, and spent the next 3 hours changing tires and checking engine lights. By lunchtime, his back ached and his mind kept drifting. Not to the bride or the vows or the overpriced cake, but to Daphne, the way she'd crouched beside Tessa like she did it every day. The way she'd watched him, not with pity, but with curiosity like she was trying to figure him out. He was wiping his hands on a rag when his phone vibrated. Unknown number, he answered cautiously. "Hello, Felix Harper." The voice was clipped, professional, female. Yeah, who's this?" "This is Melissa Chan. I'm Daphne Brooks' executive assistant," he blinked. "Okay." "She asked me to contact you. She'd like to meet this evening, 7 o'clock. Brooks Tower, penthouse level. Will you be available?" Felix hesitated, glancing at the clock above the hydraulic lift. Yeah, I guess I can be." "Good. Dress business casual. No cameras necessary. Please check in with security upon arrival." The line clicked off. Felix lowered the phone slowly. Penthouse. He didn't have many clothes that counted as business anything. But after his shift, he rushed home, picked up Tessa from Miss Carla's, and scrambled to find the cleanest shirt he owned that still had all its buttons. Tessa sat on the bed, watching him change like she was waiting for a magic trick. "Where are we going?" she asked, hugging her stuffed dolphin. "I'm going to meet someone," he said. "You're going on an adventure." Her eyes widened. "Where?" "Miss Carla's again, just for a little while, but I already went today." "I know, Munchkin." He knelt down. "But this is important. I promise I'll pick you up before bedtime." She looked unconvinced, but nodded. By 6:45, Felix was stepping into the marble lobby of Brooks Tower, holding his breath. The security guard at the desk barely looked at him before waving him toward the private elevator. The ride up felt like an ascent into another universe. When the doors opened, he stepped into a hallway lined with framed black and white photographs, snapshots of city skylines, nature, and laughter in the rain. She was waiting for him in the foyer of her penthouse, barefoot, holding 2 glasses of something golden. "You came," she said, handing him one. "I almost didn't," he admitted, taking it. "I figured." Her penthouse was nothing like he expected. No cold glass and steel. It was warm. Wooden floors, shelves full of books that had actually been opened, a record player in the corner, a cat napping in the sun. "I didn't invite you here for a drink," she said, walking toward the living room, "though you're welcome to it." Then, "Why?" she turned. "I want to offer you a job." Felix laughed before he could stop himself. "You what?" "I watched the raw footage. Every second you captured, you see people, not just their faces but their fears, their joy, the way you framed the father-daughter dance. You could have been born holding a camera. I barely know how to use the thing, exactly, and still you found moments no one else saw." Felix set the glass down. "Look, I appreciate it, but I can't just quit what I'm doing. I've got bills, a kid, I need steady hours." She nodded. "That's why it's a full-time offer, with benefits. Health, dental, the works. I'm launching a creative division under Brooks Estates. I need someone who can capture the human side of luxury, not polished, not fake, real. You're the only person I've seen who can do that without even trying." He stared at her. "You're serious, completely." He ran a hand through his hair. "This is insane." She stepped closer. "Maybe, but I haven't stopped thinking about you since yesterday. And not just because of your camera work." His heart thudded. "Daphne, I know you've got a daughter. I know your life doesn't have room for risks, but sometimes the risk is exactly what changes everything." He looked at her. Really looked, not the penthouse, not the barefoot CEO. Not the woman with a team of assistants and a skyline view, just her. And for the first time in years, Felix felt the ground shift beneath him in the best possible way. Felix hadn't realized how long he'd been pacing until Daphne gently touched his elbow and led him to the long, low couch facing her floor-to-ceiling windows. The skyline bled amber and rose, the sun melting behind towers of glass and steel. He sat stiffly, hands clasped, eyes flicking to the glass of untouched bourbon on the coffee table. "I know it's a lot," Daphne said, settling across from him, a quiet steadiness in her voice. "But I meant every word." Felix leaned forward, elbows on his knees, trying to find footing in a conversation that felt like a dream. "You're offering me a full-time job in a field I've barely touched, with benefits. And a salary I probably shouldn't ask about because I'd pass out." "You should ask," she said. "I want transparency." He let out a breath. "I'm not used to people handing me things I didn't fight tooth and nail for." Her gaze didn't waver. "You're not being handed anything. I saw your work. And I trust what I see." He stared at her, trying to read between the lines, but there wasn't any subtext, just her, confident, direct, beautiful. He scrubbed a hand over his jaw. "What's the catch?" "There isn't one," she said. Then, after a pause, "Unless you count the fact that I'd prefer to work with someone I already want to know outside of work too." His chest tightened. "You're seriously okay with that, with me? A guy who gets paid by the hour and can barely cover his kids' field trip fees." "I don't care about your paycheck," Daphne said. "I care that you see people without trying to sell them anything. That's rare, and I think that same instinct could build something here." "Something new." Felix glanced around the room. "This place, it's not what I expected. I get that a lot. You don't act like someone who signs off on million-dollar contracts." She tilted her head. "Is that a complaint, more like?" "Confusion." Daphne stood and walked to a shelf lined with books and framed photographs. She picked up an old picture of a girl in a school uniform posing beside an elderly woman in a garden. She handed it to him. "My grandmother," she said. "She raised me, cleaned houses her whole life. Taught me to read using menus and laundry tags. She used to say, 'Success without kindness is just greed in a velvet dress.'" Felix studied the photo. "She looks proud." She was. "I bought this building in her name. She never made it past the first floor, but she used to tell me if you ever climb high, bring someone with you, even if they think they don't belong." He set the photo down carefully. "You think I don't believe I belong? I think you've been told you don't. Too many times." Felix swallowed the lump in his throat. "This is more than a job offer, isn't it?" "Yes," she said without hesitation, "but that doesn't mean it's not real." He let the silence settle, watching the lights flicker on across the city. "I have responsibilities. Tessa's everything to me. I can't take chances that put her stability at risk." "I understand," Daphne said, "which is why I had legal draft a preliminary contract, flexible hours, remote options, access to studio space when you need it." and a guaranteed salary floor for the first year, whether or not the division launches on time. Felix turned to her, stunned. You already had that drawn up. I don't make offers I haven't thought through. You don't even know if I'll say yes. I had a feeling, she said with a small shrug. And if I'm wrong, I'll respect that. He stood, walking toward the windows. Below, the city pulsed with life. He could see the park where he took Tessa to feed the ducks, the bus stop they waited at when it rained, the coffee shop where he sometimes splurged on a muffin when she had a good week at school. I want to say yes, he said quietly, but I'm still trying to figure out if this is real. It is, she said, joining him, and I won't rush you, take the night. Think it over. He nodded slowly, then turned to her. Why me, Daphne? Out of everyone you could have hired, why someone like me? She met his eyes. Because I've been surrounded by people who know how to fake things my entire life. You don't. And I am so tired of fake. Felix didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. Okay. She walked him to the private elevator. Just before the doors opened, she touched his arm again. No pressure, Felix, but if you come back tomorrow, bring Tessa. I'd like to show her the rooftop garden. He stared at her, emotions tangled. You're not what I expected either. Good, she said. Then we're even. The doors closed between them. That night, back in his apartment, Tessa sat on the floor drawing sea monsters with crayons while Felix read the contract 3 times, checking every clause. It was solid, generous, real. He didn't sleep much. By sunrise, he'd made his decision. And when he told Tessa they were going to see a garden at the top of the tallest building in the city, where the flowers touched the sky, she squealed, and asked if she could wear her dress with the sparkles. He smiled and said, absolutely. Because something told him this wasn't just a new job. It was the beginning of something far bigger. The rooftop garden was unlike anything Tessa had ever seen. Her small hand tightened around Felix's as they stepped onto the open terrace, where trellises bloomed with wild roses and soft jazz floated from hidden speakers. The city stretched out below them like a silver sea, and the sky above was a pale, cloudless blue. Daddy, Tessa whispered, eyes wide. Are we in the sky? Felix crouched beside her. Feels like it, doesn't it? Daphne appeared beside a waist-high planter overflowing with lavender, a watering can in hand, dressed in a soft top blouse and slacks that somehow made her look both powerful and at ease. She smiled as Tessa ran straight to the row of sunflowers taller than her. She's even better in daylight, Daphne said, her voice quiet but warm. Felix stood, brushing his hands on his jeans. She didn't stop talking about this garden the whole subway ride. Daphne glanced over at Tessa, who was now crouching beside a butterfly bush. I knew she'd like it. We used to have one of these back in my grandmother's neighborhood. She swore butterflies were drawn to good hearts. Felix looked at her. So you've been planning this for a while? She didn't look away from the flowers. Let's just say I hoped you'd say yes. He nodded slowly. Well, I did. She turned to him then, something unreadable in her eyes. Not just the job, no, he said. Not just the job. They stood there, the air between them charged but unhurried. For once, neither had to fill the silence. It just fit. I want to ask you something, she said finally, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Okay, are you afraid of this? Her eyes searched his face. Us, whatever this is becoming, he didn't hesitate. Not afraid, he said, just cautious. I've spent so long making sure I could be counted on, I forgot what it felt like to be chosen. Daphne's expression softened. You were chosen, Felix. The second I saw you chasing that moment with your camera like it mattered more than appearances, I knew. He stepped closer. I've never had a safety net. I can't afford to fall unless I know someone's going to catch me. I don't want you to fall, she said. I want you to stand next to me. Tessa interrupted them, holding out a daisy with both hands. This one's for you, she said to Daphne. Because it's the tallest one I could reach. Daphne crouched to accept it, her eyes suddenly bright. I'll keep it forever. Felix watched her tuck the flower behind her ear, and something inside him settled. Not in a boring way, in a way that felt like breathing after holding it too long. Later, after a tour of the rooftop beehives and a short stop for gelato in the building's cafe, Daphne walked them to the elevator. I have a proposition, she said as the doors slid open. Something a little crazy. Felix raised an eyebrow. How crazy? There's a gala next weekend. Big fundraiser. black tie. I'm supposed to make a speech about the new creative division, and it would help if my date was the man who inspired it. He hesitated. Me, in a ballroom full of billionaires. She stepped into the elevator facing him. You belong there, Felix, not because of the suit. Because of what you bring into every room. He looked down at Tessa, who was licking the last of her pistachio gelato and humming to herself. If I say yes, she's got to come too. She's already on the guest list, Daphne said, with a custom dress being made by my designer. She's going to steal the show. The elevator doors closed around them. The next week passed in a blur. Felix spent his mornings filming test footage for Daphne's new campaign, Real Families, Real Stories, unscripted and honest. In the afternoons, he helped Tessa pick out hair clips and shoes for her first formal event. Every evening, he and Daphne spoke sometimes about work, sometimes about nothing at all, but each conversation peeled back another layer. The night of the gala arrived with a stretch limousine and a tuxedo that fit better than any piece of clothing Felix had ever worn. Tessa twirled in her navy gown like a spinning top, her curls pinned with little gold stars. Daphne met them at the entrance to the ballroom, her dress a deep bronze that shimmered under the chandeliers. She took Felix's hand without hesitation. Ready, he didn't let go. More than I've ever been. The room was a blur of faces, cameras, champagne flutes, and applause. Daphne's speech was short and powerful, ending with a nod to the new division and a single line that brought the crowd to its feet. I believe the most precious luxury we can offer is truth, and this man, she said, glancing at Felix, reminded me how to find it. After the final toast, as the band launched into a slow number, Felix took her hand and led her to the dance floor. I've never danced in a place like this, he said. Then let's make it unforgettable. They moved slowly, the crowd fading around them. For once, there was no camera between him and the moment, just her, and the way her fingers curled against his shoulder like she'd always been meant to be there. When the music ended, Daphne leaned in, her lips just against his ear. So what now? He looked at her, really looked past the dress, past the crowd, past the empire she ran. I think we just start, he said. Together, however that looks. Say it, Felix, she whispered. He took a breath, steady and full. I'm in love with you. She didn't smile. She didn't gasp. She just pulled him closer and said, good, because I've already told the entire board I'm not doing any of this without you. The kiss that followed was quiet, no fireworks, no camera flashes. Just two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way, holding on like they'd never let go. And neither of them ever did. 3 months later, the buzz around Brooks Estates' new creative division had shifted from cautious curiosity to full-blown industry fascination. The campaign Felix had built stories of real people in extraordinary moments had gone viral in ways no one expected. Luxury had never looked so human, so raw, and his footage had become the centerpiece of it all. The only thing more unexpected than the campaign's success was the man behind the camera becoming a media darling overnight. But Felix never let the attention shift his focus. Every day, he dropped Tessa off at the private school Daphne had quietly funded through the company's philanthropic wing, then walked into the studio space she'd built just for him, where his ideas were now backed by a full team of editors, producers, and designers. But that evening, he wasn't thinking about deadlines or scripts. He was standing in the middle of the penthouse's dining room, adjusting the collar of his shirt while the scent of roasted rosemary chicken drifted from the open kitchen. Tessa was seated at the table, organizing place cards like a miniature event planner, her tongue poking out in concentration. You sure we didn't forget anything? Felix asked, glancing toward the wine glasses. I triple-checked, she said, not looking up. Even the napkins have the fancy folds. The elevator chimed softly, and Tessa jumped to her feet, racing to press the button before Felix could stop her. Daphne stepped out, heels in one hand, a tote slung over her shoulder, and a look of amused exhaustion on her face. You look like you've been through a war, Felix said, taking the bag from her. I had 3 back-to-back meetings and a broken elevator at the downtown property, she replied, kicking off her shoes. But this is exactly where I wanted to end up. Tessa held up a folded cloth. You get the gold napkin, it's the special one. Daphne grinned, leaning down to kiss her cheek. How did I get so lucky? Felix watched them interact, something warm threading through his ribs. Dinner's ready. You've got 10 minutes to change if you want to pretend we're the kind of people who dress for home meals. She laughed once. You just want an excuse to see me in that silk dress again. I won't deny it. Later, after Tessa had gone to bed with a story, a glass of water, and her favorite lullaby on loop, Felix and Daphne sat on the balcony, the city lights reflecting in their wine glasses. He turned in his chair to face her fully. I've been thinking about something, he said, running his thumb along the rim of the glass. If it's about installing that espresso machine in the studio, I already approved it. No, it's bigger, her eyebrow lifted. How big? He set his glass down. I want to build something, not just the division, us, this family, but I want to do it right deliberately, not just because we fell into something good. She leaned forward. Felix, you've already built more than you realize. You gave me a version of this company I didn't know it needed. I want to give you more than that. Daphne's expression shifted, not surprised, but deeply moved. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I never thought I'd be someone who had a second chance at this, but I am. And it's because of you, because you saw something in me when I couldn't see anything but survival. She didn't speak, just watched him, eyes full. I want to marry you, Felix said, his voice steady. Not because it's the next step, or because people expect it, but because I can't imagine another single day where you're not the first person I tell everything to. You've changed my life, Daphne. And I want to spend the rest of it changing yours in every way I can. She opened the box slowly, revealing a ring that wasn't flashy but deeply personal, a vintage band with a single oval sapphire. She looked up, her throat tight. It's exactly the kind of ring I used to draw in the margins of my notebooks. I know, he said. I found one of those notebooks in a box in the storage closet. She laughed through the tears and nodded. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. The kiss that followed was different than the one on the dance floor. This one was quiet, sure, and full of everything they'd built, not just passion, but trust. The wedding was small, held in the rooftop garden where it all began. Tessa walked ahead of them with a basket of white petals, pausing every few steps to sprinkle them with solemn importance. Daphne wore a dress with simple lines and a high neckline, her hair down for the first time Felix had ever seen it. He wore a slate gray suit and couldn't stop smiling. Their vows weren't long or poetic, they were honest. I promise to build with you, Daphne said, not just homes or campaigns, but something that lasts, something that matters. I promise to never stop seeing you, Felix replied, even when life gets loud, even when we're tired. You'll always be the first story I want to tell. The kiss was met with applause from a small group of loved ones, his sister, her mentor, Tessa, beaming from her seat in the front row. That night, back in the penthouse, Tessa fell asleep curled between them on the couch, still in her flower girl dress, a daisy tucked behind her ear. Felix glanced down at her, then looked at Daphne. You realize she's going to want to sleep here every night now. We'll rotate sides, Daphne said. You get the feet tomorrow, he laughed, pulling her closer with one arm. Deal. Outside, the city moved on. But inside, the world had narrowed beautifully to love found late, to dreams that didn't look anything like the ones they'd started with, and to a family that had never followed a straight line but had arrived exactly where it was meant to. And they stayed for every sunrise that followed, for every small moment that added up to a life together. Always.